Welcome to the Legal Influence Podcast, a show for influencers and content creators looking to grow thriving and influential businesses legally. I'm your host, Kate Cooper. I'm a Colorado attorney and outdoor content creator and blogger, and I started the Legal Influence to provide accessible legal education to creators. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about reviewing and revising brand deal contracts and why it's so important for you to do this when you're representing yourself as a creator. But before I dive in, I have to provide some quick disclaimers. Nothing I share today is legal advice. Everything is for informational and educational purposes only. While I am an attorney, I am not your attorney, and listening to this episode does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and I. So a common question that I get asked about brand deal contracts is whether creators and influencers can review their own brand deal contracts and if it's okay to make revisions. And the answer is absolutely yes. You can pretty much do anything you want when it comes to your business. Now, as an attorney, I would love it if every single creator had every single brand deal contract reviewed by an attorney. And that's not because I want attorneys to have more work. It's because a brand deal contract and a brand deal is a business transaction that comes with risks. And your contract is one place where you can potentially mitigate risks, or you can open yourself up to more liability. Oftentimes, the contract that you get from a brand is going to be one-sided, and an attorney is not only trained and equipped to help you identify and explain all of those potential risks, but they're also going to be able to make the changes needed to help minimize them. So I do recommend working with an attorney to have your brand deal contracts reviewed if possible. And depending on the size of the brand deal, working with an attorney may be something you pursue. However, I know that hiring an attorney to review every contract is just not realistic or cost effective for most creators. And that's a big reason why I started the Legal Influence. I don't have specific stats, but I would say that most creators out there are probably reviewing and revising their own contracts, especially if you aren't represented by management. And you may still be making really good money as a creator. It's just on a per brand deal basis, it just doesn't make sense financially to work with an attorney. In fact, many creator attorneys out there have a certain minimum threshold amount when it comes to reviewing a brand deal contract. So if you're representing yourself and reviewing and revising your own contracts, I really want to make sure that you have all of the tools and knowledge that you need to protect yourself when working with brands. As I always say, you are your own best advocate. An attorney is going to be the next best thing because they're going to owe you a fiduciary duty, which means they have to act in your best interest. But no one knows your inner motivations and goals and values like you do. And being an influencer in particular is a very personal business. So you need to feel empowered when it comes to making decisions in your business. And that includes having the confidence and knowledge to review, understand, and make changes to your brand deal contracts. Now, if you currently have or eventually start working with a manager, they're probably going to be reviewing contracts and negotiating with the brands to make revisions, but you should still be looking at your contracts and making sure that you read them so you know and understand everything that is in there. Also, keep in mind that unless your manager is also a licensed attorney or they're working with an attorney, they are not qualified to provide legal advice. And the agreement that you have with your manager should outline the scope of the services they're able to provide to you. So right now, influencer and creator managers aren't really regulated in the same way that traditional talent managers and agents are, especially within California. So it's really important that you pay attention to the services agreement you have with your manager and possibly have that reviewed by an attorney ahead of time so that you understand what your manager is there to do for you. But back to reviewing your own brand deal contracts, I know that there are creators out there who might be listening to this podcast right now who are signing their brand deal contracts either without reading them, or you might be skimming through them, but you're never really making any changes, even if things feel off about the agreement. And I totally understand that it can be intimidating at first, especially if you're dealing with a really complex agreement with a lot of legal language, which is what a lot of large brands typically send over. But you can learn what common brand deal contract terms mean and what to keep an eye out for so that you feel more confident and secure when it comes to negotiating and signing your brand deal contracts. I also know that sitting down to review a brand deal contract is probably the last thing that you want to do in your business. It's a tedious, boring admin task. So I understand how tempting it is to just sign whatever the brand sends over without looking at it first. Maybe you skim a couple of the major provisions, but you're not spending much time actually looking it over. And if that's you, that's totally okay. This is a shame-free zone, but I really want to stress just how important it is for you to start spending time reviewing and potentially negotiating the terms of your brand deal contracts for a few reasons. So, number one, you want to verify that the contract you are signing accurately reflects the agreement that you made with the brand. There may be terms included in the contract that you never discussed or that don't align with the terms you agreed to with the brand. For example, the deliverables might be wrong, the payment amount might be wrong, there's usage rights you didn't discuss. So you want to make sure you're reviewing the contract to make sure it accurately reflects what you and the brand discuss during negotiations. Next, you want to identify any risks or red flags in the contract that you might not be comfortable with. There are a lot of different provisions and terms that a brand can potentially include in a brand deal contract that can be drafted to be one-sided or potentially put you at risk. For example, there might be a one-sided indemnification provision that shifts all of the liability to you in the event of a third-party dispute. There could be a one-sided non-disparagement provision that restricts you from speaking openly and honestly about the brand. You need to know exactly what you're agreeing to before signing your contract. And if the terms are unfairly one-sided, you need to be able to identify that and then renegotiate those terms. And number three, you need to fully review your contracts because you need to see whether you have any obligations or liabilities under the contract that you might not have expected. For example, there could be a morality clause that restricts you from engaging in certain behavior, and it's important that you're aware of that up front. And depending on how the language is drafted in that sort of provision, your past activity could potentially put you at risk of having the contract terminated. So that's a really important thing to be aware of going into this contract. You may also have unexpected obligations under the contract, like meeting strict deadlines or having to create the content a certain way. You really just don't know what could potentially be in any given brand deal contract until you fully review it. I'm constantly surprised by things that brands include in contracts, and sometimes they're helpful provisions, but oftentimes it's the brand adding in things that take advantage of creators in some way. And I know that a common objection that creators have when it comes to actually revising the contract after you review it is a fear that the brand is going to back out of the contract and back out of the brand deal completely if you ask for revisions. And I just kind of want to dispel that fear because it is normal to negotiate the terms of a contract. And especially if one party has drafted and provided the contract, it's normal for the other party to come back with reasonable revisions. So if you are making reasonable requests to the brand, you're correcting things that might have been wrong, you're taking certain things out that don't necessarily need to be in the contract in the first place, a brand should be open to you asking for those changes. Now, they may not agree to all of the changes that you're asking for, but it should not kill the brand deal. If it does, if asking for simple revisions, causes the brand to walk away, that in and of itself is a red flag. So you might have dodged a bullet there. But in general, it is normal and expected to negotiate the terms of a contract. So don't be afraid to request revisions. So I really hope that helps highlight why it's so important to take the time to review your contract so that you understand it completely and can make revisions as needed. And if you want a crash course in reviewing and revising your own brand deal contracts, I am actually getting ready to launch an online course that provides everything you need to know about reviewing and revising brand deal contracts. This is something I've been working on for a long time because I want to make sure that the information in the course is digestible as possible while providing all of the tools that you need to understand and make changes to your brand deal contracts. So the course is tailored directly towards influencers, content creators, and bloggers who are working with brands. And it includes real life examples from different brand deal contracts, along with resources to make the entire contract review process easier. And if you want to be the first to know about when the course launches and get access to an exclusive discount, you can sign up for the waitlist, which is linked in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening to the Legal Influence podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love for you to do me a favor and leave a rating and review. And if you know any influencers or content creators who would benefit from this episode, please send it on to them. Talk to you soon.